Last time we asked you to stop and think about a question. When Jesus talks about building on a rock, what is he talking about? There are definitely several different things Jesus wanted to tell people. But I think out of all of these, it could be summed up with one word. And that's the word love. Love. We will have another question for you in a moment. But first, it might be helpful to remember a story we looked at the beginning of the spring term. You might remember the story of a shepherd who had 100 sheep, and one of them gets lost. And because he cared about them and cared about the lost sheep, he went searching for it. He went out looking for it, and he looked and looked and looked until he found it. And when he found it, he placed it up on his shoulders and he brought it home. He carried it all the way back to the sheepfold. And when he found it, he was so happy because he had found his lost sheep. I don't know whether you had a Bible when you were little. This one is the Little Bible Storybook, and it has a story of the lost sheep. And you see, there is the sheep on the man's shoulders being carried home. Now, that story and this particular Bible might be too young for you. Maybe you have a younger brother or sister who has the story and this storybook. Maybe you could go and read it to them. But you remember that the lost sheep felt valued because the shepherd came looking for it. The shepherd cared about the missing sheep, even though it was the sheep's own fault that it had wandered off and got lost. The shepherd still came looking for it. Now, of course, you're all wise enough to know that this story Jesus told isn't really about a shepherd looking for a sheep, but it's about the people God loves and how God loves every single one of them. God loves me and God loves you. In fact, he loves each and every one of you. So we know that the Bible tells us that God loves us. But what has this got to do with the story of the wise and foolish builders? Do you remember I said I had another question for you? Well, here it is for you to think about. Does the Bible tell us that God loves us because of what we do or who we are? I'll ask the question again. Does the Bible tell us that God loves us because of what we do or who we are?
Hi there, I'm Carla. So, what has this to do with the story of the wise and the foolish builder? The important thing Jesus wanted people to know is that God loves them no matter what. And God wanted people to trust him. Jesus told this story about building two houses to help people understand this. But remember, the important part isn't about building two houses. The important part of the story is what they were built on. In this story, God's love is like the rock. If someone does build a house on rock, they know that when a flood comes, the house isn't going to be washed away. Jesus is saying that trusting God's love is a wise thing to do. If people trust that God loves them, they too will feel confident knowing they are created by God and loved, and nothing can come along and spoil this. They feel loved and secure, even bad things, difficult things, or sad things happen. So here is one final question for you to consider before we finish. Does God love the man who built on the rock more than the man who built on the sand? So talk about that with your teacher. Bye.